point in history, it looks like we're going to have a referendum within a year no matter what. So for those who want that referendum, they've got to keep their eyes straight on that prize so that we can have it, that it's held, and that it's a good result. As for Albertans themselves, then it's a huge historic decision to be making. So they should be looking at every source of information and asking themselves, is this a federation you still want to remain in? Because a lot of people have decided that it's not worth it any longer.
Sydney Vizard for Rebel News, coming to you from Calgary, Alberta, where separation, leaving Canada's Confederation for Alberta, is talk of the town. To learn more about the continuing struggle that is Alberta's attempt at being a province in Canada's Confederation, head to donegetingscrewed.com. Recently, Rebel News put on 2 emergency town hall style events in the province, at which I was able to interview some of the guest speakers. This included Cory Morgan, writer for the Western Standard and Epoch Times, and author of the Sovereigntists Handbook, which aims to chart the course to Western independence. And I spoke with Peter McCaffrey, founder and president of the Alberta Institute, an independent libertarian public policy think tank aimed at advancing personal freedoms and choice in Alberta.
Within the Alberta Institute, we have a number of projects that work on a variety of different things. And so Project Confederation was mentioned before, and that's our project that works on all of the constitutional stuff that we're thinking about. So the way I like to think of it is it's all the things we want the federal government to change at the federal level in the Constitution and the policies, and all of the stuff where we kind of need some agreement and some negotiation and some give and push from other provinces and the federal government.
What would you say is the most important thing Albertans need to be focused on when it comes to the whole referendum separation situation?
They need to focus on the referendum itself. There's a million questions they want to ask themselves, and why, and you know, if they want to remain within the federation, what the benefits would be if they left it. But we can become sidetracked by a pile of things. We're at a point in history, it looks like we're going to have a referendum within a year no matter what. So for those who want that referendum, they've got to keep their eyes straight on that prize so that we can have it, that it's held, and that it's a good result. As for Albertans themselves, then it's a huge historic decision to be making. So they should be looking at every source of information and asking themselves, is this a federation you still want to remain in? Because a lot of people have decided that it's not worth it any longer. It's the system that's broken, not just the party that's in. So that's what people are going to realize, that whatever Mark Carney promised, and to be honest, even with whatever the Conservatives promised, the system isn't going to be changing. And we're already seeing that. Mark Carney's already hedging his bets on a pipeline coming across the country, even though he was promising that's going to get done when he was running for office. It's in his hands at this point. And if we don't see definitive action of real change in this next 6 months, I don't think it'll be the white hot anger we've seen in the last couple of weeks, but people are still going to realize nothing's getting better under this current system, and they're going to start looking for outside ways of changing it. And the referendum will provide that means.
There's a whole lot of different things all happening at once. There's people who don't want to leave. There's people who do want to leave. There's people who want to use a referendum as leverage. And the interests of all of those different groups are aligning in slightly different ways depending on what you talk about. So the discussion about holding a referendum is aligning groups who want to use the threat of a referendum as leverage with people who want to just leave. But then when it actually comes to the vote itself, do those people want to vote to leave or not? And a lot of that may actually depend on what the polls are looking like at the time and things like that, right? Like if it's looking like it's close, that's might seem more of a risk. So the really interesting part here is, I think, how the dynamics of those different preferences and different groups might play out as we get closer and closer to a potential vote.
This is what we're dealing with. As you said, Quebec over the years, we have to pander to them. Quebec, our partners in Confederation, we've got to keep Quebec with us. It's so important. When it comes to Albertans, no. Then they're self-centered rednecks who have to be pushed down. They don't even have the right to have a referendum. That's what his piece says. He doesn't see us as a province. He sees us as a colony. That's what you read in his attitude. He's an aristocrat who thinks that we're being uppity and we should be shut down. This discussion shouldn't even happen. Well, kiss my ass, Andrew. It's going to happen. And we've got an opportunity. The Laurentian elite don't control the conversation anymore. They don't have the media anymore. We have Rebel, we have Ezra, we have Candace, we have Sheila, we have the Western Standard. And it's our job to take on the Andrews.
Let's say the Albertans vote in a majority yes to separating. What actual leverage do they have in negotiating with the federal government?
Well, if we're to believe the Clarity Act and the Supreme Court ruling on that, that should begin the process of the rest of the country negotiating that province's exit from the Federation in good faith. As was said in some of the discussions tonight, we should be looking to get 55% or more so that there aren't questions on whether the process was legitimate, and anything to try and hinder us after such a clear majority voting to leave would no longer be voting in good faith, or negotiating in good faith. So then we unfortunately would lead to things like a unilateral declaration, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. I like to think that the government then would follow the line of their own laws, and we'll start beginning the process to move this province outside of the Federation.
Whether we actually end up having a referendum vote in spring next year and how close the polls look like, I think really changes what the dynamic of that discussion might be next year. If we go into a referendum campaign with yes polling above 40%, then I think everybody's going to have to take the threat of Alberta separating very seriously, and we could see some serious negotiations between the federal and the provincial government prior to the vote even happening. If you look at the Brexit referendum in the UK, the EU offered concessions to the UK in advance of the referendum to try and encourage people to vote against the UK leaving the EU. Obviously, it didn't work in the end, but they were so worried about the threat that they made the concessions beforehand. Having said that, if the polls look like there's less of a chance of the referendum succeeding and the yes vote is under 40, it's sort of 35, 36 like it is right now, then I think the need for the federal government to make concessions is much less, and they'll be less inclined to do so. And so the dynamic of the entire discussion during the campaign could be very dependent on what the polls look like going into the start of the campaign.
Do you support the efforts to hold a referendum on Alberta separating from Canada?
I support the process of citizens being able to choose an issue that they care about and then being able to get enough signatures to put it to the people. And I guess we'll have to wait and see what comes forward on that.
And what is your personal position on Alberta separating from Canada?
My personal position is I believe in Alberta sovereignty within a united Canada.
Angus Reid poll suggested that 52% of Albertans were already of the mind that they would absolutely vote to stay in Canada. How do you convince those people that separation is the right move?
Well, that's what meetings like tonight are about. People have to get on the ground. They got to talk to their friends, their neighbors, their families, and have these conversations. As they realize the futility of the change within this, I think that needle could move. But it's on us. Perhaps it won't. Perhaps that's the peak of it. I don't believe that's the case, but there's a lot of campaigning that has to be done. There's a lot of pitfalls, and this could go off the rails and go poorly. We'll see over this next 6 months. A lot of people are impatient, and they're saying we've got to get one group, we've got to get one leader. It's not time for that yet. It's only been a couple of weeks, and the atmosphere's here. People are getting together, and I think that ground game is going to develop. And, this is a number that's there without a campaign having pushed for it yet.
If the yes campaign is already polling at 36, that can sound quite significant. But every additional vote is more and more hard to get than the previous one. And then, as you say, once you get into the territory of 52% being opposed, then suddenly you're not just trying to persuade people to move from undecided to yes, you're trying to move people from no to yes. And so that can be quite challenging. And discussion of the issues changes minds. We saw that with the federal election. A couple of months before the election, everybody was decided, everybody knew what the result of the election was going to be. The fact that somebody says they're decided in a poll a couple of months out does not mean that they will make the same decision on election day. The polls just specifically ask, if an election or if a vote were held today, how would you vote? And they ask that question because they know that even though somebody says that they've decided right now, it does not mean that they will make the same decision in an election a couple of months later.
Former Reform Party leader Preston Manning recently wrote that if Canadians vote for you, it's a vote for Western secession. You opted not to run in an Edmonton riding, even though you grew up there. You have not yet campaigned west of Winnipeg. So what are your thoughts on Mr. Manning's comments, and what is your plan to address Western alienation concerns?
Well, a couple of things. I as you know, born in Northwest Territories, grew up in Alberta. I resolved to no one in terms of my understanding of the West, my connection to the West, and I'm part of a government that governs for all of the country and very much for the West. We I think such dramatic comments are unhelpful at a time when Canadians are coming together.
The G7 is going to be coming up in a couple of weeks here. Prime Minister Mark Carney is going to be here. President Donald Trump is going to be here. All of the separatists are going to be here, including Premier Daniel Smith, not a separatist, but the Premier of Alberta, all in one spot. What do you see is going to happen here, or how do you think that this will affect global political observance?
I mean, I don't know if the global political observers are watching our independence movement that closely, aside from perhaps the Americans, because we do have a very, very close relationship. It'd be interesting if that came up at the G7, and it certainly would be an embarrassment to Prime Minister Mark Carney. You know, boy, you've got a secessionist movement blossoming in Alberta, and we've always known about the one in Quebec. I mean, what are you guys doing with that country over there?
I hope you enjoyed what these gentlemen had to say. In the meantime, let us know in the comments what you think is the most important question when it comes to this separation movement. For Rebel News, I'm Sidney Fizard. DoneGettingScrewed.com is where you have to go if you want to see the latest on Alberta's separatist movement and stay informed for any events that might be happening near you.